Welcome back to another episode of FinCrime&Me. Today, we are joined with a very special guest who I have worked with, but also has an extremely interesting story. And I feel the audience and everyone that's watching this will be extremely motivated, but also inspired with his story. So today, I welcome John Kothanek, who is currently a VP at Coinbase. Welcome, John. It is so great to have you here. And thank you very much for agreeing to being on my podcast. I know you've not done many podcasts, so I do feel extremely privileged. To start off with, and of course I have given you your intro, but I think our audience would love to know your journey, your background, and how you became VP at Coinbase.
It's kind of I feel it's a boring story. You may like it. I don't know. I started off United States Marine Corps for a very long time. I got hurt pretty bad, so I had to get out. And I was offered a job by Elon Musk at X.com to kind of be a subpoena clerk for law enforcement. They were getting a lot of subpoenas in. They didn't quite know how to deal with it. And so they hired somebody to do that. And part of what I had done in the Marine Corps was training DEA and some other guys that were going down to Central and South America. So I was like, I can work with law enforcement. I can do this. So had no experience, which was good because nobody was doing this job at the time. As we were talking about earlier, intellectual property, kind of internal investigations, bank fraud were being investigated, but nobody was doing like cyber crime kind of investigations back in 1999, 2000. And so I joined the company and I was able to see both sides. I could see X.com and I could see PayPal. And I was able to see kind of money movement between the two companies or the two financial institutions. And so I raised some concerns that I had about fraud that I was seeing. And they took it very seriously. Elon, Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, a bunch of other folks took it to heart and immediately started helping me kind of build tools and build the process to be able to investigate internally what we saw that was going wrong in the system. And that kind of started my journey. Then years later, a gal that I had worked with, our first compliance officer at Coinbase, was an eBay employee. And, obviously eBay had acquired PayPal. And so Martina had asked me to come up. I was vice president of operations at another company. She'd asked me to come up to San Francisco and help her on an issue with Coinbase. And so I did. And we took care of that issue. And towards the end of my time up there, Brian and Fred and some others asked me if I wanted to join the company. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because it was just, it's hard to explain, but it was the most amazing group of people you can imagine. They were just brilliant human beings and really cared about the mission of what they were doing. So it was a no-brainer.
Would you say your journey is kind of right place, right time?
Yeah. I think about that a lot. I think it's a bit of luck, and I think it's a bit of kind of, for lack of a better way of putting it, being a little blessed. It's right place, right time, but there's something had to kind of intervene somewhere and get me there. And whatever it is, I'm very, very thankful for it because I feel like I've had the best job in corporate America, period. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How was speaking to law enforcement back then?
It was good. It was interesting in that, so, you got to look back on, 99, 2000, law enforcement, with all respect to them, were a bunch of old number two pencil kind of guys like me, so they weren't into tech. They didn't really quite understand computers and stuff like that. Or if they did, it was just for word processing and stuff. And so it was difficult. And so we learned together. I had to, I didn't even know what an IP address was back then, and so I had to learn all these things. And, it was a deep dive. And a lot of people, we spent a lot of time sleeping at PayPal. We were a 24-hour company and we worked really, really hard. So it was great. And so I would ask engineers to help me learn about things. And,
That's great. Do you believe you need a certain personality or character trait to be in your position?
Yeah, I think you have to be curious more than anything. You and everybody else on the team, I've noticed, and one of the things we look for in the interview process is we want to know if you're curious. Do you want to get to the bottom of things? And also, do you want to do the right thing? Do you want to help people? Do you want to help protect people? And one of the things that I try to explain to the company sometimes is, and they get it, but I remind them on occasion, is that you come to work every day and you do the mundane stuff with the same gusto that you do the hard cases. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like you may work a mundane case that doesn't have a ton of satisfaction behind it or whatever. You're just kind of responding to some paperwork. Or you might find yourself on the back end of a multi-million-dollar investigation where a lot of people have been hurt, financially. And you attack these cases in the same way. And that's what we're looking for. You have to be able to come in every day, do the mundane, and then also be able to kind of, crack on with the harder stuff. Yeah.
I always notice you are an advocate for your team. Mm-hmm. Has that been because of your background in Marine Corps, for example, where it is, a lot of camaraderie?
Yeah, not only that, but and I hate to sound sappy because I'm not a sappy guy, but you guys are a special bunch, and I do truly love you like my kids, and you're just very, very special people, and you deserve every bit of advocacy I can give you. Anything I can do to make your lives a little bit better at work, even if it's small incremental stuff, is worth it for me. And luckily, we work for a company who listens, and they're good about it.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of roles. Which one was your hardest and why?
I think probably the initial part of becoming a cybercrime investigator, because I had to learn everything. Things that kids are taught in school today, back then, were kind of magic, So it was a lot of technology, a lot of stuff. And so, I learned to code and I learned how to do a lot of things back then. And it was exciting and it was fun. It was great. I loved it. Yeah.
Was that the hardest role because it was a deeper dive and then everything else after that has been a bit more just adding to your education?
Yeah, I think it's, I'm not the most brilliant human being in the world. So it's like when I'm, to learn all of this technology stuff, for going from being kind of a Marine that just goes through the world breaking things, to being somebody that has to be have a little bit more finesse, be a little bit more technical or a lot more technical. It was a stumbling block for me. It was really kind of difficult, but again, I had people around me that were very generous with their time to help me learn and teach me the different aspects that I had to put together to figure out how to be that good cybercrime investigator,
And that was when we didn't even have that much technology advancements.
Yeah.
So from that point, you've probably learned a lot more and you've seen the landscape change a lot as well.
Yeah.
On the flip side, what has been your most rewarding role?
I think Coinbase, as we've kind of talked about as a team before, it's just from the support of the exec team that I get, from you guys, from everybody else in the company, it is just everything has kind of come together in almost this perfect storm of being able to do the right thing. And it's we don't always get it right. Not everything is perfect, but man, we sure do try to get it that way. And it shows, I think. Yeah.
How do you manage tough decisions?
To me, it's always been kind of easy because there's always a right way and a wrong way. And the right way is always doing the best you can, not only for your people, but the people you serve. And for us, that's our customer. And I want us to do the same level of investigation for that 80-year-old woman in, Iowa that has decided to invest in crypto that we do for the big crypto whale, as they call them. I want us to be as devoted to both of those customers as possible.
So, as we mentioned, you have been with the financial crime sector for a while. Mm-hmm. How have you seen it change? Not just technological side, but how have you seen it change with law enforcement, with how each sector is now wanting to investigate, wanting to liaise with each other, want to actually share data. How have you seen that change?
Yeah, it's a great question because, and there is a significant difference. And I'll start with the financial institutions. So in the early days, they saw us as the enemy. Banks are these, old folks with ties, and they're kind of like, we are the banking system. You are an upstart, crazy startup company. We don't want anything to do with you. And they would not help us. They didn't want anything to do with us. I would go to conferences and they would be just outwardly ugly to us. I would bring some of my investigators and they would just be, but after they saw that we were willing to kind of help and do the right thing and take care of our shared customers, I think that really got them on the same page. Now, when we shift over, you mentioned law enforcement. We have these law enforcement folks back then were not great with technology. Now, for example, Tigran, who's one of the best, crypto investigators in the world out there, or even Iggy, he's probably the best. I worked with him when he was at Scotland Yard. He was one of the first people that reached out to me and said, hey, I have a case. Can we work on this? Mm-hmm. And I felt like, wow, there's a huge difference between their know-how now and their desire to learn and do the right thing with our bad guys and helping our good guys, our customers. Night and day difference. And it was really a phenomenal change in a fairly short amount. We're talking maybe a 10-year period of time. Law enforcement went from a nascent skill set to being very, very good at it. And I think law enforcement loves us. They love working with us because we do give them great evidence, and we do it in a timely fashion, and we're accurate. Yeah. And then as far as the people go, I would put out a resume years ago, and it would take me 6 months to fill the job because nobody knew. Nobody was doing it. Nobody really wanted to do it. When I first started at Coinbase, we had a rule where you had to be what they were calling crypto native at the time, and it was just Bitcoin. And I said, look, I can teach people crypto. I can't teach them investigative skills. So let me get investigators in here. The first person they had me interview was a guy, super nice guy, but his investigative experience was with a big bus company in America, and he investigated the theft of tires. And I was like, how is that going to So I'm sitting in this interview with him, and and I was like, nice guy, super smart. I could probably, if I had enough time, teach him how to do these things, but he just wasn't the right fit, right? So it's like even at the time, the company didn't understand our needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So do you believe that all investigative skills are not transferable, or do you believe that having investigative skills helps, but also having the know-how of the industry helps?
Yeah, now it's such a steep learning curve. Look at the things you guys have to learn now. You have to learn bridging and mixers and all the different types of crypto, and it is very, very complicated. And it takes, how long would you say it took you to kind of get to where you are at right now? Months and months and months, right?
Months, if not years.
Yeah.
And still learning.
Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the best parts of the job is like you're always learning. And I love how you guys do it where something new will come up and you'll assign one person to kind of learn that and then teach the rest of the team, which I think is a great muscle for you guys to exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think it is a steep learning curve. Each time I have anyone reach out to me and say they are interested, the first thing I will ask is, do you know about crypto? Are you involved in it? And it just goes to show more so, yes, you can have investigative skills, but because it's moving every day it's growing, I always think that you need to be involved in some way or another, even if it's, for example, trading, or you're just interested in what meme coin is out there, and you just know the landscape. And I always think that does help. But it also keeps you motivated in the job because it is a steep learning curve. If you're not interested in it, would you enjoy it? Not really. Like, it's nice to have those off work talks as well about just nonsense coins.
Yeah, and you might find this interesting, but when I was at PayPal, I had so much access to everything. Probably more than anybody in the company. And I made a decision early on, and it was probably not a wise decision, but I'm known for doing those kind of things, I decided I was not going to use the company that I worked for because I have too much access. I want to be able to kind of say to anybody that would ever question us, there's no bias, there's no, I am not doggone, I can't steal from somebody I'm not using and all that kind of stuff. It was an important kind of moral decision to me. So same thing with Coinbase. I did early test transactions and stuff like that, but I've never used Coinbase to invest in crypto or anything like that because I wanted to separate myself entirely from that chain. That I wanted to be able to get on the stand and testify to that point. And it's probably a really stupid decision, but it's one I made. Yeah.
No, that's actually really interesting. And I say that because I've been the same. I like to test every single competitor out there, but also not just have the biased view and also understand how other products work. It's also really different because I do come from banking, and in traditional banking, you had to use their products. Yeah. You were not allowed to bank with another bank, which is really interesting. And it might just be in the UK, but for example, if I worked for one bank, I had to bank with them. My salary had to go there as well. So you had to use the products and services they provide. So then you know what you're investigating, which I understand. But I'm the same as you. There should be a bit of a gap between what I'm doing personally and also professionally. And I like that the crypto industry does have that. They let you run with what you want to do as long as there's open communication, of course. So then everyone is safe and secure. I'm interrupting this episode to remind you to stay safe online. Scams are everywhere, ready to take your hard-earned money. Please ensure that you do not share your passwords, do not click on unusual or unexpected links that come through your emails, text messages, and even WhatsApp, especially when they purport to be from your bank, card company, the government, your crypto exchange, and even family and friends. If you do fall victim to a scam, please report this to your local police as soon as possible. Please also report this to your bank, your card companies, and even your crypto exchange. Please stay safe online. Thank you, and let's go back to the episode. What has kept you motivated to continue growing and building your career?
Folks like you guys, honestly. It is, when I made that decision to retire, the hardest part of it was missing you guys. It's one thing to leave a job. It's one thing to retire. It's one thing to feel like you're saying goodbye to family. And I think we do feel like that on the team. We lift each other up. We have bad days. We work with difficult subject matter sometime. And I think the most important, best aspect of the team is that we take care of each other. If you're having a bad day, if you're working a case that's really kind of ground you down, and, nobody on the team minds if you kind of step back for a few minutes or an hour or two or even a day to kind of get it together because, it's a bad world out there sometimes. And, like it or not, we deal with bad subject matter sometimes. And, but it's the team. Always the team.
It's always the team.
Yeah.
You served in the Marine Corps, and this is interesting only because not only do you have other skill sets, and of course serving your country is extremely important. Yeah. What was one of your fondest memories when serving?
Yeah, we traveled a lot. We went around the world a lot. I had grown up in a military family. My dad was an Air Force officer. I traveled a lot, but I was young, and he retired in Middle Georgia, and it was kind of insulated, and, not throwing shade on Georgia, but, you're small town. You don't meet people from different wide backgrounds and stuff like that. Once I joined the Marine Corps and was able to kind of travel around the world and meet different people and stuff like that and see that there are different perspectives out there and there are different feelings and different religions and different beliefs and, codes and stuff like that was amazing for me to do. Back in the early 80s or mid 80s, we went to Egypt and did one of the first, because Egypt used to be part of the Soviet Union's military kind of puppet force or whatever. Probably should have said it like that, but they were part of the Soviet Union's kind of training bloc. And we were the first American team to go there and train with their special forces and some other folks. And that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Something like that only happens once. You're only the first to do something one time. And
That's very true.
It was a big honor to do that. Stupidly, we all shaved our head. And the one tip I can give to people is do not shave your head before you go into the desert in the bright sun, because you will get burned bad on your head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, yeah.
That's a good tip for everyone watching.
Yeah, please. Yeah, don't do that.
Did you learn a lot of culture, a lot of cultural differences out there? And did you get to meet a lot of different people from various backgrounds?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and, in the military, you have folks from all over the world serving. I think a lot of people now are kind of surprised to hear that you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to be in the U.S. military. And so I met a lot of people just that way, from different backgrounds and different experiences and stuff like that. And, some of them were my Marines that I was in charge of taking care of and protecting and training. And they were just always the most amazing people, and yeah, it's a good way to be.
What was your most best experience, shall I say?
Just traveling. I can remember we would go to the Mediterranean. This is back when Beirut was, pretty bad in the mid-'80s. A cruise ship had been taken over, the Achille Laurel, and we followed that ship around, in case we had to go rescue those folks and stuff like that. And that never happened. We just followed the boat around. But just sitting on the fantail of the ship at nighttime with some of my Marines and some of my friends, drinking coffee and kind of just watching the world go by was just so pleasant and peaceful. It was just really, really nice. Yeah.
That sounds really nice. And especially, I always find in these experiences, it's those small moments that really make it.
Yeah.
Were there any, just like you mentioned, but were there any moments or gestures that helped you through a tough time?
So while we were getting ready for the Gulf War, my father passed away just 2 days before Christmas. And my CO came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to send you home." And I'm like, "No, I'm not leaving my Marines, because we're about to go to war. I'm not leaving my Marines." And they were like, "Yeah, you're going home." And so I had to go home for 4 or 5 days, 5 days to bury him and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But the whole process, my Marines were so good to me, and they were so, you don't expect Marines to kind of be that huggy kind of, "Hey man, I understand." They were really good to me. I lost my father, who was my hero, and they were just very, very good to me from the top down. That was a great experience for me. Yeah.
That's really nice. And I think it's always nice to have a shoulder that can help you, shall I say. And I think you're right. We will always look at people serving their country as being tough. So it is really nice for you to shine light that, there is a part where people do care. Yep. And that can be seen within the team, but also with everyone else that you come across.
Yeah.
How do you personally overcome any obstacles or any rejections that you've had in your life?
Just break it. No, I don't know. You just kind of have to move on. We all have a failure. We all, we make mistakes. We do things that may not be right or whatever. And you just have to kind of learn that lesson and move on from it. And you can't dwell on it. If one thing I've learned in my life is if you dwell on something, if you let something kind of attack you constantly, you're going to have a hard time. I think it imprints on you. Mm-hmm. The more you think about something that is bad, the more you kind of dwell on it, it becomes something that imprints on your head. And I think you have a harder time getting rid of it, and just kind of tossing it to the side. Moments that we have in our lives are temporary, and are often kind of just forgotten until you sit in a podcast room with Parole and have to talk about it. But you know what I mean? It's like, don't dwell on things.
That's a really good way to also continue with life, because I never saw it that way. Sometimes I always see things where I've been rejected for, a job that I wanted. And funnily enough, when I first time got rejected from Coinbase, even though I work here now, it really hurt me. And of course, I would just dwell on it and think, what did I do wrong? And, you start making it a thing instead of focusing on how you can move forward from it.
But that was a good thing, because now you're on a team that loves you and appreciates you and sees the value in you. And, I'm not sure what team you applied with, but do you feel like maybe you would have had the same, sorry if I'm asking the questions now, but
no,
I mean, sure. You are where you should be right now.
Yeah, I think that's what I've learned with life as well, that everything happens for a reason and there is a right time for everything.
For sure.
And if I were to dwell on that, then I don't think I would have applied again. And you're right. Maybe seeing the team now and how we are is so different to probably what it was back then. And I probably was also not a good fit back then. So sometimes it's self-reflecting, but also looking into the future and seeing what you can do in that time, which I used that time to go into another exchange and upskill so I could come here. But I definitely agree with that. I think dwelling on something can keep you stuck if you focus on, improving yourself or what the future holds. That keeps you going.
For sure.
Hope is always good.
Yeah.
What does the next chapter look like for you since you are retiring?
So I've got this juvenile fantasy where I want to go and race cars. There's this whole world of gentleman racers or, guys that just drive around in old classic cars and they go to places where there's like Pebble Beach and, other, here in Europe, especially. All these rallies and stuff like that. So I want to get a nice, I want to buy a nice classic old race car and race it. Yeah.
I never expected you to say that.
Yeah, really. I want, that, and, I've got a high horsepower Harley Davidson that I'd like to drag race that, amateur, never professional, because I'll never be good enough for that. But I just want to race.
That is very cool, John.
Yeah.
I hope you have great health insurance.
I do.
Since you're doing all of these crazy stunts, shall I say?
Yeah.
That sounds really fun. And it's also something I didn't expect you to say.
Really?
So
what would you have seen me do when I retired?
I'm not sure
knitting?
No, not knitting. I just thought you would, I don't know. I personally think that you have such great knowledge and you're really good at talking to people. So I personally thought you would do something on that line where you get to meet different people of different walks of life. I thought you would be good at as a podcast host, by the way.
But, it's kind of, what I envision is like, I've got some nice cars now and a couple really pretty cool cars. And sometimes I will come out of a store and a dad will be standing around with his sons and daughters and they're looking at it and they're looking in the windows and stuff. And I'll come up and they'll say, hey, you want to see the engine? I'll give them a ride around the parking lot, and stuff like that. And why I do that is because I think that is how I got this. My dad was big into working on cars and stuff like that. He loved doing it. And I think if you can get people into that kind of stuff, they learn a little bit about engineering and they learn why math is important and all these kind of things. And I think, if you can get kids at a certain age interested in those things, you can do that. And with the historic and, classic car racing stuff, it's not real racing. I mean, you're going around a course with somebody and somebody wants to win, but it's not as competitive. You're not trying to bang a $1 million car.
So you're not going for number one. On an F1.
Yeah. And so, but at the end of the day, before the races, during the races, after the race, fathers and moms are walking around with their kids and they're looking at these cars and they're getting exposed to it. And I love that. I love that idea.
I think, so now that you're saying it, I can see you doing that.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that is more of it's quite nice because you're right, you're motivating the younger generation. Yeah. But it's also a core memory that will stay for them as well, which I think is important. I think all of us have that one core memory growing up, which really, makes them inspired, and it's also something that you will remember as something that you want to pass on to future children or nieces, nephews, family members. So I think that's really nice.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
So John, we are getting to the last segment of this podcast. So the question is going to be chosen by you, but you have to choose an asset first. So what do you choose? Crypto, cash, or commodities like gold?
Right now, I think I would do crypto.
Crypto?
Yeah, and not just because I work in crypto, but it's like I like that it has we all know there's investment risk, right? I feel for some reason, at least in my mind with the blockchain and the way things work, I feel like you can minimize to a degree some of that risk with crypto. So you can invest, and I think what I would tell people getting into it is learn a lot about it. Don't just let somebody convince you to get into crypto. Learn, and then once you've learned, then you can help protect yourself with that stuff, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So since you've chosen crypto, your question is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone entering the FinCrime sector?
Study and learn not just what the crime types are, but learn about bad guys and how they think and feel. On the ride over here from the office in the Uber, I was talking to the guy, and he has, a very young daughter and stuff. And I was saying, look, protect your kids online. Make sure they're okay. Watch what they're doing. I know parents are often reluctant to do that, but you have to watch what your kids are doing because it can be dangerous out there. And the same thing, if you're going to investigate cybercrime and do the things that we do, you have to understand, terrorism financing and child exploitation and kidnapping and all the really bad stuff, because anything that can happen out in the real world can happen in crypto. You have to understand the criminals because you have to kind of be able to see what they may or may not do next, right? You have to kind of try to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I actually said it once in a conference, think like a criminal.
Yeah.
And I probably got laughed at. But I think you're right. You should know kind of what would someone do in this, typology, or how they would move cash, or what sort of profiling you should add to your investigation to make it better. So I think that's great advice, especially someone entering within the crypto world, or if they want to, within the FinCrime sector, is just to upskill in different ways, not just knowing the tools, for example.
And I think one more thing, you're absolutely right. And I think one more thing is, and I tell this to people at Coinbase, is seek fact. Don't introduce bias into your investigation. Don't say, don't make up a story about what you think the bad guy's doing. Seek fact and develop your theories and everything like that based on the fact that you see, right? Yeah.
That's very true. Remain unbiased, factual information. And then we can pass that on to law enforcement, and then they can take it from there. I completely agree. John, it's been great having you today. Thank you so much for agreeing to coming on my podcast. And I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, I have.
And I'm going to pass my little book on to you, and it's for you to write a question for my next guest. So it can be a personal question. It's up to you.
Okay. Who wrote the last question for me?
It was Andy, and he is a economic crime manager from Starling Bank.
And you'll be doing another, so it has to be it should be financial crime, right? Okay.
It has to be anything. You can ask a personal question if you want as well. Leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Leave a comment and let me know what else you want me to discuss. And subscribe to stay tuned for more.